questions there. So yeah, thanks for joining us. I am Dave Stelzel, Senior Vice President of Sales here at Aegis. And so today we're going to be talking about Integrated Security Assurance, ISAP. And I just want to introduce a couple of guys that are with me here, experts in the Security Verification Services group, Ashish Kulkarni and Varun Purohit. Sorry, Varun, screwed up your name. But yeah, so we're going to go through some things today, and thing I really want to focus in are some of the challenges that security organizations are facing. And so we're going to cover, how do we address some of these things? I won't go through all of them right now, but if you're in security, certainly you're seeing security is siloed across the organization, and especially in larger accounts. We see compliance as kind of a bottleneck, often not integrated into the security program. And of course, the alerts that come out of a lot of the technology that we're using today can be so overwhelming. So with that, I want to dive into some answers. How do we approach this? How do we put together a security program that really works well for the organization? So in going through a couple of questions, I just want to start out, maybe Ashish, you can cover for us, just looking at the silos and how companies that we're going in and working with are struggling today to kind of connect the dots between all the silos, the various technologies that they're using. How do they pull all this together, or how could they, to make it more functional?
Yeah, absolutely, David. First of all, I would like to thank everybody, and good morning, good evening to all. So when we talk about from the security as a silos part, a lot of organizations are performing a security activities, whether it is application security or infrastructure scans. Now the perimeter has increased at multifold. It is not confined just to the on-premise, but the cloud has been there. And since AI is a part of the integral part of the various organization now, performing a security for AI is also one of the areas that everybody is looking. When we are working with the various customers, that all these particular activities are going in a concurrent way, in a way with pretty much in a silos, and those particular boundaries are creating a fragmented vulnerability footprint, as well as it is missing a integrated view of the vulnerabilities. These particular issues leads to a lot of remediation sluggishness, and that is where we need to think differently to break these particular boundaries of the silos boundaries, and we can see that how these particular vulnerabilities can be merged, collated, and can bring a single particular view. From that perspective, we come with this particular thought process of can we do all these security assurance activities more in an integrated, orchestrated way, so that we can have a one single view which can help in accelerating the overall remediation and reducing the risk. I think I addressed your question, David.
Yeah. So let's dive into compliance a little bit. And Varun, maybe you can address this. I know compliance often feels like it's outside of all the rest of this, maybe reactive instead of integrated into the security strategy in an organization. So what can we say about that?
Okay. So when it comes to compliance, there are many things that comes into picture. It can be process, it can be technology, it can be people. And when we talk about a singular framework which helps us in identifying all the missing pieces when it comes to compliance, there are three things. First is, when it comes to process, we need to make sure that the security that is being implemented, or what type of security requirements are coming in, what type of designs are coming in, what architecture is going to be utilized. Now, when we identify all these things, the very first thing that comes into mind is whether we are designing the overall aspect of the security properly. And when it comes to security, we need to understand that security is not singular. It has to be integrated with multiple aspects, whether it comes to process, whether it comes to the embedded technology that you use, or the people who are utilizing those technologies and processes. Now, when it comes to technology, it is identification of right tools that you utilize, automating the tools that you are doing, what type of methods and methodologies are you using which can help that particular tool to give you a better result. This is where people come into play. The right champion or the right knowledge around that particular aspect of security is very much crucial. And when you enable that particular people part of the overall security space, it makes the overall cycle more sustainable. Now, when you have people into play, you need to identify what KPIs they are going to utilize, what sort of roadmap or journey are they going to utilize. Now, this all combination of all these things make a fundamental base for any program that you utilize. Now, this particular program, what would be created would be with adherence to any framework that you're utilizing, any compliance that you're utilizing, because at the end of the day, any compliance will majorly talk about what processes you have, how that particular process is mature, what technology are you using, are you using an optimized tool technology, and you're utilizing it to the fullest. And then when a resource or a consultant or a person is using those particular process and technology, are they adhering to it? This is where compliance can be completely incorporated within an organization. Now, this is what we call as 3 fundamental pillars of any framework. Now, the framework that we call as ISAP, that is Integrated Solution Assurance Program, it comprises all 3 of them, where the focus is primarily on technology and integration of processes, utilizing the people strength behind that. I hope that answers your question, David.
Yeah. Now, did you? I know there's a. Can you forward the slide there? Yeah. Did you want to comment on any of this here, Varun?
Okay. So the framework that you see on the slide right now, it's more of a integral part of this particular framework, wherein it talks about different aspects of technology, people, and governance integrated into a singular framework. Now, any framework which you talk about must have few things predetermined and pre-noted within that particular framework. First is how the framework has to be utilized. Second is where that framework would be used. Third, who's used it. And fourth, whether it solves your problem that you're facing as an organization. Now, the framework that we have put in, that is ISAP, it covers all 4 areas, defining aggregation of all the assets that you have, making sure that there are no duplicate findings or issues identified throughout the environment, identification of different security spaces across the environment, across the architecture, across the organization, and then making sure that the complete security space or governance is focused on one singular item, that is, what is the overall security risk associated for that particular organization. Now, depicting that particular aspect comes as a challenge for most of the organizations, because you see different teams running different types of security initiatives within an organization, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be application, whether it be cloud, whether it be development teams. Each of them have different security landscapes associated with them. Each have to follow a separate methodology, a separate framework, a separate process to make sure that the constituent risk that they identify is associated to that particular space itself. Now, as an organization, when you see those individual pieces, it doesn't make sense, because you see there are 5 risks associated to infrastructure, but then there are 5 risks for application as well. And when you collate all those information, you see there might be duplication of those particular risks associated, because at the end, for an organization, what matters is a singular risk, which covers all the aspects of their infrastructure, whether it be development, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be application front, whether it be backend technology that they use. What we do in this particular framework is we collate all the information from all these particular singular pieces, get them together into a single module, run a proper AI-based, technology-based framework, which has integration of different security solutions coming in from all these teams, various team members, various tool sets that you have, whether it be application security tool sets, mobile security tool sets, infrastructure testing tool set, whether it be incident response, whether it be any sort of SOC monitoring. All those integral pieces are being feed into this particular solution, and it gives you a singular dashboard. Now, this dashboard talks about the overall risk, which focuses on showing the risk as one, that is mixing all those particular identified vulnerabilities and correlating them so that the duplication goes off, contextualize the security risk so that any executive, any management person, or any individual team member also can understand that what is the overall risk associated to that particular team or firm or an organization. While we are doing that, the most important piece is prioritization. There is a specific algorithm that has been put in place to make sure that the risk associated to any asset which has been targeted or any risk that has been identified on that particular asset, how that particular risk comes into play, with what impact does it has, what is the likelihood of it, what is the target space for it, what attack surface areas does it cover. We calculate all those context, we take a number system associated with each of them, collaborate all this information and give you a single space, singular point where it shows that, okay, on this particular asset, these are a list of issues identified and these are the ways to remediate it. Now, this remediation that is talked about is focused and pinpointed to that particular asset for an organization. That particular remediation can solve multiple issues which might have been identified on different scales and different layers of the infrastructure, whether it be application, infrastructure, or architecture, or maybe design as well. Now, this particular solution that we have, this particular solution has a capability of integrating more than 150 different tool sets available. These tool sets are well defined between different landscape, whether it be application security, mobile security, network security, cloud security, whether it be design related security, whether it be architecture related tool sets. All those tool sets, there is a capability to have an integration done and then show you a singular landscape of it.
So let's move on from there. We got all these silos, trying to bring those together. One of the things I know we've talked about is how many alerts are coming into the average company and how overwhelming it can be to just try to sort out what's real and what's just noise, especially in companies that have not tuned correctly. Can you address a little bit that? How do we fix that problem?
So let's take an example of an organization which has agile methodology and which has all the tool sets implemented and available within the organization and which are coming from different layers of the teams. Now, the very first thing that as a part of solution, what we do is we have all these applications, all these tool sets onboarded to this particular solution so that it showcases that, okay, all the integrations have been working properly. That is the very first aspect. Second is all these tool sets that we see, whether it's coming from code, whether it's coming for application, whether it's coming from infrastructure, they correlate to a singular point, which is a correlation on prioritization tier, wherein we take the different scan reports, different reports coming in from all these tools across the environment. For example, let's say for code review, when you have tool called as checkmarks or app scan, that the report would be feed into this particular tool. For application security, let's say you have tool called as Akinetics or Burp Suite, the report has been feed into that particular tool. And coming from infrastructure and code, there are multiple tools like Qualys, Wiz, Tenable. All these reports running at different scales or different tiers of the organization. All these have been integrated into a singular platform. Now, as per any life cycle that you have for any sort of releases going in for an organization, what it does is for a change that has been done, it will run a definitive scan around all this different layers, whether it be design related scan, whether it be architecture related, whether it be application functionality related, business oriented, or infrastructure which is underlying it. It runs different scans. All the scan results are being populated into a singular module where it does correlation and prioritization of all those risks and then showcases a single dashboard which shows the actual and prioritized risk so that it gives you a different option. Okay, whether you have how many critical risk. Now all this risk that you say, whether it's critical, high, medium, and low, these are prioritized depending upon the environment that is built in. Each environment had different sets of assets, whether it be external assets, internal assets, whether it's mainframe environment. All this technology or assets that you have their own risk associated to it. We take that into picture to identify whether and identify risk. What impact would it give when combining with different issues which has been identified on different layers of this particular complete framework. It gives you that context, which makes it easier for an organization to build a solution or remediate those particular risks, and then covering more in lesser time.
All right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I thought you were finished.
And apart from this, what it does is, as a part of, let's say you have an environment wherein you have ticketing systems like Jira or ServiceNow or any other ticketing system, it will then help you in managing all those ticket solutions as well simultaneously, so that you have a singular space stating that, okay, this ticket associated with an issue has been identified as a critical risk or high risk. And then you can, once the team has done the changes, it pushes those changes because it's a bidirectional change. So you can then identify, you can understand whether this particular identified risk has been remediated on time or not. All those SLA mapping and everything can be mapped easily on a single space.
All right. So looking at all these tools, and maybe Ashish, maybe you can address this, but I know we find that clients have a difficult time getting a unified view of what's happening in their security environment across all these tools if they don't have a single console, a single pane of glass to look at. So how do we address that?
Yeah, sure, David. And this is very common problem in an industry because when we are talking to the various CISOs across organizations, what we realize that a lot of tools are getting used that we have already seen, and the vulnerabilities are getting generated. They have their own dashboards, and then managing all these different tools, their dashboards is a nightmare. However, some organizations put forward their steps and trying to build some Excel-based dashboarding and all. But here, the point is not just putting a dashboard and giving one particular view. So there are many significance to this particular dashboards. See, the important aspect here is to collate and correlate the vulnerabilities that Varun has already discussed. But the important factor is how we collaborate with this particular rather how we can collaborate in an environment using this particular platform is more important. Because vulnerability identification typically is performed by CISO function, and when it comes to the remediation part, it goes to the CIO function, and the collaboration is a key thing when we talk about from the remediation standpoint. And that's the reason these particular platforms are very important, where whether it is CISOs, CIOs, who can take the informed decisions basis on this particular real-time data. But at the same time, if you see the developers, the patching team, the security analyst, everybody is logging into the same platform and they can see the one single source of truth when it talks from the vulnerability data standpoint. And this particular collaboration is more important to accelerate the overall remediation activities. Another important aspect, if you see, is traditionally the vulnerabilities are sharing in a mails, and that particular data is getting buried there. However, if we see this particular platform where it can generate a lot of trend analysis on the vulnerabilities. For example, the specific for a SQL injection or a cross-site scripting for a specific application is coming again and again. Then we can see the patterns, we can see the trend, and basis that for those particular application development teams, we can then have a curated source code or secure coding practice trainings so that we can reduce the infusion of the vulnerabilities. So essentially what we are trying to do is moving from the reactive to the proactive approach when we talk about from the security. Because unless and until we reduce the infusion of the vulnerabilities in ecosystem, it will never stop this particular vicious circle, and that is the key aspect when we talk about from reducing the vulnerabilities and reducing the overall risk. And that is where this particular dashboarding plays a vital role. Now industry has already recognized it, and lot of regulatory entities are also now saying that okay, you should have such a dashboards where the visibilities are required, and the CIOs, CISOs should have a clear understanding of the overall uh, program hygiene, and they can look at it.
So maybe we could take that a step further and just talk a little bit about program execution in ISAP and how we integrate AI into that.
Yeah, absolutely, David. See, what is though these particular activities or these programs looks good, and those are pretty good on the paper, but what if on the ground how we can do this? That is the overall aspect that everybody is looking. So when we talk about such a program, the key part here is how we can plan these particular programs well, where we can first identify the customer footprint, ring fence this particular scope, and then identify the different stakeholders. Planning the various aspects of it is very much important. Then the one of the important parameter here is to define the matrices and go along with it. However, when we talk about from the planning to the next stage, it is important to adopt whatever the activities are there as is, whether it is performing the application security activities or infrastructures and all, and that actually helping to sustain the business as is for the way we are taking up. But we do not want it to stop there. The story not ending there, and then we have to go into the transformation where we have to set up this particular platform where then we have these API integrations where the different scanner results are getting ingested into this particular platform, the way Varun has explained earlier, so that this particular platform then can help in taking this particular program to the next level. This particular then developing the different dashboards, developing or tracking monitoring of these particular activities with the help of a different matrices are really helping when we talk about from the continuous improvement standpoint. And I think those are the key success areas when we talk about from the program execution perspective. It's not only about one particular company. We have done this with multiple companies, and at a various scales, whether it is a smaller, medium, or a larger scale companies that we have done at a various levels. I will invite Varun now to just explain about one particular case study where we have implemented this particular program to a detailed extent.
So The case study that I'm going to talk about is one of the Fortune 500 companies, wherein there are a few challenges that the customer had, in particular with the overall security of the organization. The first was having split of different security roles and postures within the organization, having a larger asset base wherein they had more than 500 plus applications, more than 5,000 different assets, and different geographies that they worked in. Now, this although was been handled by the organization very well, but the overall challenge that they faced was getting all this information at a single place. That was one of their biggest challenge, because different region had different team wherein they had to do different assessment across their environment throughout the SDLC cycle. Now, all those checkpoints were already created in the organization, but these checkpoints and these guardrails that were created were fragmented across. Now, when we came in as a vendor, as a partner to the organization, what we did was, the very first thing that we identified was to meet with all these different teams to identify what all technologies and processes are they following, whether it be different tool sets that are utilizing for a singular activity. And what we identified was different teams across the different geographies had different tools for same activity. Let's say for application security, they had 2 tools in 2 different regions. This was one of the key findings that we identified. Second was, we noticed that all these findings that were coming were duplicate on different layers of these environments, whether it be code instance or coming in from threat modeling aspect, whether it coming from architectural aspect. All these findings were being identified, but then apart from identification, the remediation process itself had some gaps in between, wherein identification was easy, but then remediation was a challenge for them, because all these issues were coming in from different team, and then getting into discussion with these teams to understand how to remediate this particular identified issues was a challenge for them. What we implemented as a solution for them was, we integrated all these different tool sets into one singular integrator. That was the very first thing. We removed duplicate tools for singular type of testing. Let's say, giving an example, they had 2 different web application scanners. We removed those 2 into one, which reduced the licensing cost and tool cost for one of the tools that they had extra, which reduced that over a larger space. Second was then integrating all this reports into a singular point, and then correlating all this information and making sure that the overall security issues that had been identified and displayed to the different teams and specified team members is specific to what they need, which was the correlation of different tool sets, asset inventory, getting the proper mapping of those particular issues, assigning it to right team members with the help of the CMDB that they had, and then doing a proper asset inventory target based integration as well. Now, overall security posture wise, what it did was, it reduced 40% of their duplicate findings and achieved a reduction of 40% overall security issues, which was somewhere in their backlog for some time at least. Now, over a period of 6 months, this reduction enhanced, this framework improved, and the overall security posture of the organization from a maturity scale of 2, it went to maturity scale of 3, wherein all these integrations were properly placed, all the recorded information was properly segmented, and then all this information was properly put in at a single place, identification of all those reports, verifying all these reports, remediation of all those identified issues, and helping the developer simultaneously in understanding what process they need to follow for future references, minimizing the overall future costs associated as well for the remediation process. Now, this particular platform collaborated all the different processes, landscape associated within the organization, and then brought in a measurable, prioritized output, which was helpful for the organization to generate different types of reports available for different compliances that came into play for a specific region, for example. Each region that the organization had multiple compliances, whether it be ISO framework, or whether it be for India region, there were multiple compliance modules associated with the organization. They were able to generate reports easily for the complete organizations on that particular region in a single report, showcasing the overall security of the organization.
Okay, so that's kind of the ISAP framework. Maybe Ashish, I know we have a slide in here somewhere that kind of summarizes or brings all this together. Could we take a look at that and maybe just run through it quickly to give us the big picture? I think you might be on mute there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely, David. I think we have discussed a lot of different challenges, those that we have observed in the industry as we are working with the various customers across globe. What we realize is different challenges are getting addressed with the help of definite solutions that we have put in here and that we have already discussed so far. Bringing a vulnerability visibility is one of the important aspect. How we can collaborate with the different stakeholders on one particular platform is another important aspect. And then especially a lot of no matter what is the region, everybody has to go with the regulatory compliance needs, and adherence to that is another important aspect is getting addressed here. But if you see in a nutshell, there are a couple of important aspects that this particular program with the help of the platform is addressing. Is important aspect is more of a reduction of the risk, faster time to market, because the businesses are agile now. We as a IT and security has to support a business, and how we can improve the time to market is one of the important aspects that we need to look into, and that is where this particular ISAP program is helping us. And overall reduction of the risk is more important because as we are interacting with a lot of CISOs across industry, and at least 10 out of 9 CISOs are saying that yeah, they are worried because of the lot of vulnerabilities are getting piled up. That particular risk is is carrying that they are every day, and that is where such a programs are essential is what that they felt. And I think with this particular program in an integrated, orchestrated way will really help in improving the overall posture within the organization.
All right. So I know we have a couple minutes here for questions. If people have questions, you can certainly chat those in. I've received some questions already, so if you have a question, feel free to pop that in the chat, and I'll try to get to you. And it could be Varun or Ashish, either one of you, whoever has an answer as I go through. But so we're talking about ISAP, which is a program we put together. Can you give us a sense of how do we use that, or what are we actually doing to intelligently prioritize alerts and false positives?
So when you see different reports coming in from different tools, whether it be threat modeling tool, whether it be source code review reports, whether it be web application testing reports or infrastructure testing reports, what we do is we first identify the base of that particular issue. When we say base, it's more prioritized to a specific asset that it is targeting, and what asset is it utilizing for that particular risk associated. Now, once we've identified that, what we do is we make sure to understand what is the priority of that particular asset itself, whether it's an external facing asset, whether it's an internal facing asset. Apart from that, then there are certain metrics developed within to identify a risk score associated with the business. That is, what business impact would it be in case if this asset is not available for the utility or for the business? What impact would it give? So there are a couple of scores that comes into play from the organization, which we generally identify under CIA ratings. We take those particular scores, mix and match this with the asset and different reports coming in to give it a more contextual rating. That is one. Apart from that, what we do is, as a manual process as well, there are people associated wherein they verify all these hooks that are coming in from different reports to see whether that particular hooks are aligning properly or not. When I'm talking about the hooks, this is more from the risk perspective, what it is targeting, whether it is targeting a specific API within that particular asset, or whether it's a call which that bin asset is called from, or whether it's the software that particular asset is utilizing, or it's the design of the overall position of that particular asset. All those are been covered to identify whether the risk that has been identified, what scale that particular risk will come into. And simultaneously, what we do is, let's say if on a singular asset, there's multiple risks are coming in place, it also validates whether this particular security risk is coming the right stage of the issue. Whether it, let's take an example of SQL injection. So if a SQL injection is identified on web application when we are doing dynamic assessments or when we are doing source code review, it pinpoints the location of that particular as vulnerable component within the code and on the infrastructure simultaneously, and then validates different security controls which are being implemented, and then gives you an overall risk associated. If there is a control in place, whether it's a primary control or a secondary control, it validates that simultaneously and then gives you a risk posture explaining that whether that particular risk is a critical risk, a high risk, or a medium risk.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So one of you, here's a question. So obviously everybody has different technologies out there, and we think about implementing something like ISAP. How does this integrate with existing things that people already have, their EDRs, their firewalls, security scanners, whatever it is they've already got in place?
Yeah. So as we saw this operating framework, David, earlier, see, the important aspect here is that every organization's technology footprint is different. As we have worked with the various customers, we realize that the security investments are heavy, and if already the organization has put in the investments in their existing tool sets, we primarily leverage that particular investment, and we integrate those particular security scanners, different devices, those who generate the vulnerabilities into our platform. The platform, as we have seen earlier, has a rich integration capabilities. More than 150 plus different integrations are possible. So we are doing those particular scanner integrations with the help of API connectors, and that is how we ingest all these particular vulnerabilities into a platform. We have seen the different patterns of the implementations with the various customers. Some customers are saying that, okay, you come with all the technology tools, everything right from the scanner till this platform, and you implement the entire end-to-end solution for us. However, some customers are saying that, yeah, we already have certain investments, you try to leverage it, and we're happy to do that. That is what we see, a mix and match, and we work with every customer and providing a very curated solution. But the framework or the program remains same.
So what about a technology like ServiceNow, like a ticketing system? Do we have the ability to have a bi-directional integration with ISAP?
Absolutely. So the platform itself has a capability in having a bidirectional integrations with the Jira, ServiceNow, ticketing, different ticketing tools. And that is a key thing here. The reason is the overall automation that we are trying to bring in the overall ecosystem is more important. It's not only about prioritization of the vulnerabilities or correlation and collation of the vulnerabilities, but how we can remove this particular operational barrier by sharing these particular tickets and all is also more important. So the security analyst who is working on the platform, analyzing the vulnerabilities, then they can assign this particular vulnerability with the help of a Jira ticket, and those particular Jira tickets are getting automatically created. And when the developer fixes any vulnerability, they can also mark that particular vulnerability as a fixed in Jira, which will reflect it into the platform, where the security analyst will validate, and if the fixes are satisfied, they will close it. So this is how the bidirectional integration are really helping in removing all the operational hassles.
Okay, and maybe the one to conclude here with is timeline and supports. Obviously, this has to be integrated in with all the things that somebody already has. What does the development timeline look like, the ability to put this in place, and then what does August provide ongoing in terms of support?
Okay, so as I mentioned, this is not a month or a two job. It's a journey that we have to adopt along with the customers. When I discussed about the overall execution approach as such, we are going in a very step-by-step manner, where we understand the customer footprint, performing the as-is analysis from their technology, process, and people standpoint, identify the various gaps, and to core the we are taking care of the existing application activity or application security or security assurance activities, whether it is application in all aspects, and then implementing this particular platform, onboarding the different application scanners, infrastructure scanners, and ensuring that all the vulnerability feed is getting into the platform. While doing so, also working on the different process gaps, if there are any, defining the matrices, SLAs, so that we can really measure our progress on the overall posture standpoint. While doing so, one more important aspect that we do is having a very tight governance, where we work very closely with the customer stakeholders, and we have a weekly, monthly, quarterly governance activities, where we really measure the progress, and that is where we see the predictability in overall outcome of the this particular program.
All right, great. Well, that's the last question. Maybe we just flip to the last slide there. Appreciate everybody joining us today.